All right, let's do it. You want to drive Central? You sounded like you did.
I can do that. So before we go to the meat of the various issues, there are a bunch of things that are just waiting on checking your boxes, and those are marked in the agenda. So maybe we can just go through them quickly. So stabilize macros in some more positions. We discussed this on a meeting where Nick Cameron was here as well. And well, check it out. And take your boxes or not if you don't feel inclined to.
I'm going to make that a little stronger. Check your box. I'd like us to start getting our FCP list under control. So check your box, or if you don't, then leave a note why, and we'll discuss it in depth.
Yeah, what Nina said.
I thought I would chime in with something related to that. I have tended to abuse not checking my box as a proxy for I don't understand this, and I'm hopeful that all but at least most two people in the group will understand this. And I should really fix that by actually posting a note about the degree to which I'm not getting something, and then delegating. I would be happy to have a process for let me officially delegate my checkbox to so-and-so, and
there is an RFC box issue for that, but unfortunately, I don't have the time to implement it.
Yeah. Effectively, I would like an abstain option for I don't object, but I have no clue.
Yeah. That would be nice. At the moment, that's called check your box. But,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, having +0 and -0.
I think we need to revisit the whole process, but we can come back to that.
We have a governance working group for that.
Yeah. So the next one of this kind is the convert the \r/n to \n in the include stir macro. So could Scott or bots check their boxes? That would be really nice. And there is another one, which is about the meta macro matcher. So Josh, Felix, Scott, bots. That's 63681. No, sorry.
No, I just never got a notification about this one, but yes, please.
63674.
You know what? Let me also share this window for the recording.
Yeah, that would be nice.
I'll do that. I forgot I wasn't doing that.
And finally, if you jump to the nominated issues, there is 56375 regression cannot determine resolution for the attribute macro test. And it should be done now, I think.
Okay.
Is
that just okay?
Yeah, the bot is just slow. Let's see. So the coherence stuff.
It's also, did we do custom self types?
Yeah. All right.
It's another instance. Checkbox. We were proposing to postpone it. Okay. Alrighty.
So the coherence can be bypassed. The sound hold. Nico is working on that one with Blitzer and Ariel as well, maybe.
Yeah, I wrote up some notes on how to do it. I started doing it, but Blitzer indicated they might like to pick it up, which seems great. They told me just yesterday they were doing some stuff. But the first goal is going to be basically, we're going to push through a first approach, which you can read the details there. But basically the goal is to get some creator results more than anything. Like this may or may not be the final PR, but it'll give us an idea of what the impact is going to be.
I think the approach seems quite reasonable. It also seems to scale well with Fox's RC.
Right. Which reminds me, the other topic is so there's the RFC that Boats did some time back about making DIN trade always valid, and this plays well with that, as Central was saying. But there was a PR that I have been rebasing for somebody else's PR that I've been rebasing for a while now, which I hope to land really soon. It's like basically ready to land, but for some diagnostic impact. So that's another bit of work that's been happening, and hopefully can get that done, because I think it will play well with the fix. Because basically the difference, I don't know if you all remember this, but there are some bugs around DIN trade, and what if we take this change where DIN trade is always a valid type, then essentially the fix is narrowing the conditions when DIN trade implements trade a little more, versus without this RFC, where there's sort of 3 levels where you have like DIN trade is not legal, DIN trade is legal but doesn't implement itself, and DIN trade implements itself. So it's kind of nicer if you have this RFC.
This actually scales well with the idea of having being polymorphic on bounds, like universally quantifying the trades.
Yes, right. It works okay.
It's nice if we feel like adding that in the future.
So the other update, it doesn't have an issue. Well, it has a variety of issues, but there was this temporary lifetimes change around async 08. I sent out mail. I'm now feeling pretty good about the current master, and partly because I think the rules make sense, and I think there is a path around for removing some of the least ergonomic cases that would benefit both async and sync code, which is basically giving ourselves the right to move drop and make the dynamic lifetime of value shorter. But also because a lot of the regressions turned out, when I looked more closely, to be the result of bugs where they were basically unnecessary errors. We were just being too overly approximated, and it wasn't actually fallout from the change, more that the change exposed prior bugs. So the fallout is less than anticipated, plus the rules seem right, plus there is some kind of path in the longer term. It seems to combine for me that we should keep going as is. If anyone disagrees, we can discuss it. But
with respect to the pure drop, that seems like possibly const drop might solve.
Yes, possibly.
Yeah. Which I think we need to solve in any case.
Okay. Let's take some notes on what I said. So going to nominated PRs?
Yes. Well, there's a bunch of check your boxes PRs.
Right, we talked about those, right?
Yeah.
So we have an update on the no unwind attribute logic, maybe also the RFC thread. We could leave that for a main topic. I don't know. I feel like I want to see this get done, but
I would.
Or we can dive some into it now.
Not to discuss this so much today because there's like a bunch of comments on the RFC that feel relevant, which I haven't had the time to read yet, and I suspect other people haven't as well.
Okay.
I can appreciate that, but this is somewhat time sensitive in terms of trying to get this. I'm not talking about the RFC, but solving 63909 would be good to solve.
I don't think it's. I mean, this has been the case for years, so
I appreciate that your preference would be to not merge it, but I don't want to have that happen by default through delay as opposed to through intentional decision.
Why don't we talk about 63909 specifically, which probably isn't blocked that much on the RFC, for a few minutes. I think, just to set a little bit of the frame and bring people back in scope, what 63909 does, because I don't think, like for example, Bose and Scott, I don't know how much you were following this, is it basically temporarily, at least that's the intention, removes the LLVM attribute that says that external C functions don't unwind, which means that it's not LLVM undefined behavior if they do so. The intention was to add it back when we have a proper fix, which we're working on in the RFC. And so there was two questions, right? One was whether to make this change at all, and the other is whether to beta backport. And I think we've kind of decided the window has passed for beta backporting.
Yeah.
But I still, we could discuss whether we want to do this unlightly. I would like to just clear this out one way or the other. It's kind of a constant annoyance.
Sure.
I also would like to express a little bit of frustration that the window had not passed for beta backporting a week ago when this was proposed for merge.
Right. I guess I will say that I don't feel a lot of urgency either way. I think the argument in favor of doing this, I think, is reasonably sound, but it is true that the behavior, like having this attribute, has been the case since a long time. I don't know if it's since 1.0, but for a long time. So it does seem like whether we make the change in 140 or 139 or whatever isn't going to be the most decisive factor. So I don't think we should stress too much about that.
And as soundness holes go, well, this is not the soundness hole, but as soundness holes go and miscompilations, I think there are like ones that are far more pressing and actually cause problems, whereas this one doesn't. I haven't seen anyone actually like having problems from this, and I'm thinking primarily about the loop thingy, the loop soundness hole.
But doesn't so Moz JPEG relies on unwinding? Do they actually get miscompilations because of this attribute?
I haven't, and it seemed to be working for them even though we emit the attributes. From what I hear.
These are big claims that has caused miscompilations.
I thought they claimed there are examples. I think they were artificial. Did they have real life examples?
There are, I believe, examples of miscompilations that occur today. Those don't tend to come up in the people who are using this code in production. They know how to work around them. But as far as I know, it is the case that LLVM creates some traps for you if you, no pun intended, if you don't very carefully write your unwinding code.
I imagine that part of the reason this doesn't come up is that this attribute is put on an extern C function, which usually gets called from C. Is that correct? I guess there's...
I think it's on both sides, right?
Yeah, the miscompilations tend to happen, at least the examples I've seen, happen if you make an extern C function and then call it from Rust, which is not an unreasonable thing to do, but it's something that the people who are trying to make this, to use this pattern don't tend to do.
I don't know if we also put the attribute on the call that goes into C itself. In that case,
we don't actually. At the moment, we just assume that it won't unwind and will give, weird behavior if you do unwind without expecting it.
What about
okay? So
the optimizations that this is enabling? Is there any documentation about important there in real life?
So it's basically a matter of dead code elimination as much as anything.
Makes sense.
I think we had some examples where it made a big difference, but they were small bits of code. We don't have an idea what the real world impact is one way or the other in a realistic code base.
From my perspective, the main concern I have is like stabilizing the panic ABI in some de facto stabilizing it in some way.
Yeah, I mean,
talking about this thread or the RFC?
Well, they're related, but mostly the RFC.
Well, the reason I ask is I don't think 63909 relates to stabilizing the panic ABI.
No, I think Central is saying that if we send this, we're sending a message that people can unwind through C ABI, which we intend to eventually make illegal. I think I guess I felt like Ralph had a really good response to that. It's too bad he's not here, but kind of basically that is possibility, but that this is something we are working with in a lot of areas, and it hasn't been proven true in practice. And certainly the people who are known users of it today, are well aware of the plans and supportive of them.
At least two of the primary users of this, Lucid and libjpeg, have explicitly said, if you give us a way to do this correctly, we will happily do it correctly. And they would love to ditch the current unwind-based mechanism in favor of whatever way we provide for tagging functions that are allowed to unwind.
I guess one thing I would add is that the fact that there's a bit of a internal contradiction of saying, well, this UB doesn't seem to be causing a lot of problem for people in practice, and a concern about de facto stabilization, because the same thing can occur regardless of what attribute we put on the thing, as long as people are relying on it, which they are, which is why we have a problem in the first place. There is a certain amount of de facto, that is true, but it exists whichever way we go here.
Well, there was the suggestion that they know how to work around it, and
yep,
right.
You're saying it'll be
easier
because it will actually unwind properly and run destructors or whatever.
Yes,
it's true.
So, I understand that if they have a better solution, they would like to, obviously they would like to use that one. I mean, it seems obvious. But there's sort of an assumption that there will be, and I don't, that depends a lot on the RFC, and I haven't read enough from that one to assume
it seems like there has to be. All right, well, we spent 10 minutes on this. I guess I definitely
don't think we are obligated to do that if it would cause problems in other forms.
I'm trying to think what is the way to resolve this. I guess it depends how strongly we feel about landing it, because I think the most obvious next step would be to take a small set of people and move to a more narrow discussion. It seems like this impacts, I think last time we observed that, which I thought was interesting, that basically there is a more general question here of how much we want in general to accommodate when we see things that are causing problems, whether we want to back off from optimizing around those problems until we have the story, or whether we want to leave it in this ambiguous state where people don't have a correct way to do things.
So one instance where we did that was the uninitialized and zeroed. We changed one thing, and then we reverted it for one version and added a lint. But I think the difference in that case is that we made the change. This has been the case for a long time, and we have been very explicit about this is UB.
That's right. So we've been very explicit, so that, what does that say to you? That
there is complaints feel less legitimate when we are in the case of our story about no alias and the borrowing rules. the actual rules feel very unclear. So triggering UB and relying on that in that case seems like, okay, I accidentally triggered UB because I don't know the rules, and well, we don't know the rules either. So I have more sympathy for that, which is, I mean, that was the example that Ralph brought up. But in this case, we have been very clear.
Right, but we also haven't provided a alternative.
Yes, I mean, we don't. I don't think we have to solve every use case ever.
We don't, but when people had a solution and we gratuitously break it and to give them no alternative, that creates problems, even if it's just, a half a dozen users that we're breaking. I don't have a problem with this is UB, but here's the way you can do it that isn't UB. We're going to break this and move you over here, and here's a lint. But this is UB, but it's worked for 30 versions, and now we're deciding to break you and there's no alternative. Doesn't feel.
But that's not. Yeah, I agree with you. Sorry, I'm just trying to think. Like the actual issue here is not where no one's arguing in favor of introducing the aborts at the moment, right? Which would definitely be breaking people without recourse.
Well, to be clear, there are people who are arguing for that, but we are not entertaining that notion at the moment. There are still many people arguing for it.
Right.
Well, I have
not in this people arguing for it.
Not in this moment, though. In this meeting,
I have always said that I wouldn't be okay with that. So.
Yeah, but that's not where we're discussing whether to do that or not. We're discussing whether to basically, I'm trying to figure out is how much do we. No one's really asking us to make this change, right? This change came about because Ralph thought we were in an inconsistent state, which is correct.
Yes.
But it's not that people are it's not that people's crates are not working. No, Ralph is correct. We are in an inconsistent state. I'm trying to decide. I think this is what it comes down to. I personally don't feel. I think Ralph, if it were up to me, I probably would make this change because I think that Ralph's case is correct. We are in an inconsistent state. But I also don't know how hard I want to push on it. I think we have two choices. Either we try to resolve this in a separate meeting or we don't, right? I don't want to...
I'd like to mention one third alternative here, which is I think in general, if we went ahead and merged the RFC and implemented it to actually have a way of saying, here's an ABI that can unwind, then I think we can just ignore this one and re-add the aborts. This PR came about in large part because of the expectation that the RFC has become kind of interminably blocked by an infinite series of non-obvious complaints.
Right. And I think my basic feeling is I'd rather we spent energy on getting the RFC through than debating whether to make this change.
I agree. So with respect to the RFC, there seem to have been a lot of comments, which makes me that much more unsure about landing this PR. So if we actually focus on the RFC, I think that would make me more comfortable.
A quick comment on the RFC. As far as I can tell, the last 50 or so comments amount to a large back and forth on, yes, but even though you're saying you're not promising a future ABI, I think you're really promising ABI. So I'm not really quite sure how to resolve that other than saying, no, we're not.
And it seems like we should go through and try to thoroughly document the concerns and move on. That's what I think, unless we find that there's something that we're worried about. I mean, I think at the end we may be doing some amount of implicit documentation, and we'll just have to keep going. Like we're promising less right now. We're promising that people can unwind through ordinary C functions. So we're narrowing our scope.
So I just need to read the RFC and the comments in there, and I haven't had time to do that.
So Josh, you're going to be away for a while. Do you think you'll be able to keep up with the RFC, or should we how should we keep it moving in that time?
I think that if we can merge it in the next week, then that would be great. And if not, somebody's going to need to shepherd this in my stead.
I think merging it next week. seems unrealistic, personally.
As far as I can tell, there's one very loud objector on the RFC, and if that were dealt with, then the RFC is ready to merge.
Well, I have to see how much I agree with that one loud objector.
So let's try to write down a summary comment. And will you be here at the next meeting, Josh?
No, right? No. The 26th, the day I'm getting on a plane.
Okay.
Where to?
Vacation, I guess. So can we?
Oh, sorry, vacation. Yes.
All right, Central. Do you want to read through and prepare a summary of what the concerns are?
Yeah, that seems reasonable. Since I have to read it anyways, so it seems like a good use of time.
And what do we want to do with this issue? Are we going to just, I don't know.
Is there some way we could schedule to like revisit it if the RFC gets blocked or, doesn't progress?
We can certainly just leave it and come back to it for now. You can say revisit after summarizing state of RFC. But I feel like, yeah, that seems fine.
Right. Yes. Moving on to the ref parameter incorrectly decorated with no alias in the nominated issues. Maybe you want to talk about this one again.
It's really not much to say about it. So the problem, there's a subtle and somewhat non-obvious reason that we currently give no alias attributes on ampersand T types. It turns out that is not always correct. And so there's two questions. One is, how much do we care about the immediate problem where we're generating these incorrect annotations? And two is, what are the rules we want in the longer term? And basically, we could probably leave things as they are for now, since it's been this way essentially forever. We may notice some similarities to the prior discussion, but that would mean that you can create UB in safe code. We could modify the library to use raw pointers, which would sidestep the problem. We could modify the compiler to be more conservative with no alias, which would also solve the problem at the cost of some optimization. The reason that adopting raw pointers, we would basically be modifying the ref type to have a raw pointer. So it would solve the problem with the ref type. There could be other types that have a similar pattern.
Is there anything exposed that would make it visible to users of ref that this is a raw pointer?
No.
So this is entirely an internal change to the library that would make this work?
That's right.
We do need to use non-null.
What is the downside of making this change then?
There's not much downside that I know of. The only downside I can think of is that, I can't really think of a downside actually. I came up with, I had some sense that like, this is the second problem we've encountered with ref because it's using this pattern, and we didn't fix it the first time, and there's some value in the fact that we may not have found this problem if we hadn't kept it around. But I feel like
canary.
Yes.
But it feels like we could solve that another way.
I had the suggestion with respect to the canary that we would just make a copy of the current implementation to test in Myriad, and then we can run the tests there. And Ralph can play with it.
Right.
Boats, did you have something you want to say about non-null on that one?
Just that it needs to be non-null so that an option of a ref is still a pointer.
Yeah, I guess I really mean non-null and not raw pointer. But
I looked at the discussion.
Right. It's. I mean, the case I was wondering about. Make sure if I understand. There's no way it could be like a fat pointer, right? That's the one I was thinking would be different for a raw pointer.
I think you can have a ref cell of an unsized type, I believe. So it could be a fat pointer.
So that wouldn't work then, right?
No, I think you can also have raw pointers. I think of.
Oh, I've forgotten. I guess what we do for raw pointers of fat of unsized type. Then okay. For some reason I thought that didn't carry the extra word. Okay.
Yeah,
it's a good point to double check, I guess.
But yeah, we just to make sure that it's non-null, so that options don't, sell it to the MPO.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah.
So,
okay.
Do we want to recommend we use raw pointers?
I think so. It seems like a consensus.
Maybe someone wants to post that.
It seems like you have the most context.
Yeah, it's fine. I can do that. 6.
I think I've got enough context. I can write that one up.
Okay, that's good because Nico is busy.
So the rebalance coherence. So in the process of writing, the process worked. If you all remember, I started surveying the tests we had, saw some gaps, wrote some tests, and was like, oh, wait, this doesn't work the way it's supposed to. So then we now have a PR that fixes those tests. I haven't gone through. I want to make a spreadsheet or something to try to see if we've really tiled the space with all these coherence rules because we were missing some things. And I started trying to do that and realized I was going about it the wrong way. In particular, I was editing it in Markdown and it was taking me forever. So I'm going to find some other technique, but I think we'll probably try to move forward again on this soon, hopefully. 63197, yeah. So another instance of tricky rules. This has to do with const generics. Basically, there's some embedded code that creates constants. They're hard-coded pointers, which makes sense in embedded and nowhere else, pretty much. And we currently have some rules that reject this. You can sort of work around it. Because basically the rules now say is they look at the value and this is an integer, you can't cast this to a pointer. We have some workarounds for this. Like you can do it without a const, or you can write a function that returns it. Ralph had written a proposal, which I haven't fully understood, about some way to accept it. I'm sort of inclined not to talk about this right now because I'd like to schedule it and be able to talk about it in more depth. But
another point is that we are rewriting the qualifications code, and some things are happening in the world of const right now. So I would like to not rock the boat for some time.
Maybe we should schedule a meeting on all that stuff. Because I still feel like const generics are my poster child for stuff that is happening that the Lang team should understand, but most of us don't. At least have a bigger picture.
I thought that was name resolution.
Oh, no. That is another one. I have several poster children. That's a good point. Name resolution is slowed down now. That was true back when 2018 was happening.
I don't think this has much to do with const generics, though.
Yeah, it's
just with const FN.
Const FN. I mean, you can already tell I'm kind of sloppily combining a lot of things that that maybe could be separated. So the right people to bring in for said meeting, I guess, would be Ali, Ralph, you.
Eddie, maybe. Ecstatic Morse, perhaps. Ecstatic Morse is working on the qualifications code.
Ecstatic Morse. Okay, I don't know that person, but maybe you can put their username in there.
1 sec.
Double checking something here. This is only defining this, not dereferencing this, right?
Correct.
Okay.
It would always be, we would obviously fail to compile a dereference of an integer cast to a pointer.
Right.
Or maybe not obviously, but we would fail. This is more about what the final value you're allowed to produce. We basically have a sanitation rule, so to speak, that goes over and says, let's look at that final value and make sure it matches the type it's supposed to match. Okay.
By the way, Matthew has already made a PR for the raw pointer interface. Just an update.
Ah, cool.
Future-proofing the enums and structs thingy with non-exhaustive. So no real updates for now. And the main question is whether to have a dedicated syntax or not. And then there is a different question about whether to have a lint or not in some cases, which David thought was useful. But Nico thinks that the feature is independently useful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I should probably comment.
I don't think we need to block this on a lint.
I also don't think it seems like a pure extension to me. And
Yeah.
there are cases like my example was standard IO error or something where you would never exhaustively match even within the crate. But right now we handle those with some weird hack where you make like a variant with a unconstructible struct and stuff like that.
I thought we took most of those out.
Well, we may have done it and just said we're going to break you if you exhaustively match, but we don't have another solution, do we? Not that I know of.
We put non-exhaustive on a lot of the library things already.
Oh, because we said that defining such a struct is okay, but not like consuming a struct is stable.
Yeah.
Okay, well then we've already basically locked ourselves in here. Case in point, we started using it for stuff and it was useful. So
I mean, it seems like there's only a conversation whether we use syntax instead of an attribute, which I don't.
Yeah.
I think we just stabilize the attribute and then maybe someday if we feel like we really know syntax.
I don't really care about this. I'm okay either way.
Yeah. I think we just shouldn't talk about it for another 3 months.
The issue? Like
about syntax or about stabilizing?
Yeah, that's also my question.
I think Boats' position is let's just stabilize and be done.
Yeah.
Which is sort of where I lean, but I guess I feel like
I like that position.
Central, if you want to push syntax through, I'm behind you, but I do want it to happen. And we could push it through later.
Is there anyone here who would object to syntax?
I mean, it looks like people is the syntax just ... Because there are people on the issue who don't like that.
Sure, but I mean,
there was a lot of voiping going on there. What was the comment, Central?
I mean, there are people who don't like the attribute as well.
The question is anyone in the Lang team have strong feelings about syntax like this as opposed to this?
So the main reason to have syntax is that, well, we already use this syntax in other contexts to mean sort of the same thing.
I'm kind of uncomfortable with the syntax because it's not Googleable and it's fairly opaque.
I also find it to be kind of, I'm not quite sure how best to describe this. Information theoretically, it's far shorter than its usefulness warrant. It feels like this isn't the kind of thing that is used so frequently that it needs to be incredibly abbreviated as opposed to being a word.
Plus, it's going to destroy whiteboard coding of like, here's a sketch of a struct that I throw in some dots, and somebody interprets that as being this.
No, those are 3 dots. That's totally different from 2 dots, obviously.
There is one technical advantage to using syntax, which currently, at least, I don't think the attribute can handle, and that is procedural macros would not see the attribute. I think that might be something we could change, but that would affect naming solution probably.
Wait, wouldn't procedural macros see the attribute as long as they were written before the attribute?
That's correct, but
derived ones see them. Derived ones don't see each other's attributes, at least. Like
derived, I believe all of them see the attributes beneath them.
So then the only reason this is for the syntax is just that the syntax necessarily comes after any attribute?
Yeah, that's it's not possible to write it. So, if that's important, it's clearly better for it to be syntax, because then it always works. But not clear to me that's important.
Now you can imagine, I don't know. It's not hard to imagine people that, I don't have an example, but it's certainly possible to imagine this being a gotcha. But I guess it comes back to it may not be that common anyway.
I guess if it is a gotcha for you, you just have to move it down below the attribute, and
right.
That wouldn't break.
It doesn't matter for derived, for example. At least not all common derives that I can think of.
Well, derives do match against the enum, probably.
Yeah, but they're matching within the current crate where you can match exhaustively.
That's right.
So
good point.
Any code that the procedural macro generates would be doing that. Right?
Yeah.
So it would be probably good to add a test with a drive macro and non-exhaustive after it, just to see that the printing output sees it. That shouldn't be too long.
Is there anything particular about non-exhaustive for that case? Is it fundamentally different from other macros?
No, but we might not be testing that. I wouldn't. Okay,
so it's more of a
which seems more important to more likely a proc macro is processing.
Yeah. So Josh is raising a procedural point here in the doc that I think is also.
Yeah.
I don't know how much we follow this, but it does seem like in general. Go on.
The general rule, I would love to not say, we've been testing this feature for months. Let's change the syntax and immediately stabilize the new syntax. If we change the syntax, perfectly fine with me. I don't have an objection to the new syntax heavily. It's mildly not my preference, but I don't think it's strong enough that I'd raise a concern over it if it were FCP. But I think that if we change the syntax, we should not stabilize this for a while.
Sure.
I think I have a similar feeling that I'd rather it be stabilized in its current form than delay it, since I don't feel strongly. Go ahead, Butts.
Yeah, I think we should stabilize it, and then if there's use cases, it turns out, proc macros really do care about this, then we can add syntax and deprecate.
So I think that if we stabilize this one with the current form, I wouldn't ever want to introduce.
Yeah, I know you wouldn't, but it's just
it's an option though.
Yeah, there's always the option. It's if things go badly, but I don't really see any reason to think that things will go badly. So
sure.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that my general preference is that we should think hard about technical debt.
Well, the syntax has downsides, then the upside seems to mainly be this really obscure possibility, and so we already have this implemented. People have wanted to use it. It's 2 years since RFC was accepted.
I think the Google thing is. I hadn't thought that much about it, but I find that fairly persuasive also. Just the fact that it has a nice name and you can easily find it.
Yeah.
Well, there's a dot in other places and it seems to work fine.
I find myself fairly persuaded by the argument that we could just stabilize this in its current form and also allow someone who wants the ... to propose an RFC for a dot as an alias for non-exhaustive. I don't feel like this is such a horrible increase in language surface area
Right.
to decide, oh, we have to, not have an attribute for this. If this was surface syntax that was not an attribute, I would say otherwise. We should not have two duplicate surface syntaxes. But attribute space is pretty much just identifiers. I don't think it's a big deal.
And I think to the would we change it again later, this doesn't feel like one of those ones where I really, really, really think it needed syntax and the attribute is something we're just sort of sitting around with begrudgingly. I think I'm totally okay with the attribute.
That is a fair point. Yes, that is a fair point.
If this is one like, no, the attribute's kind of icky, so we would really like to change it, and then we'd rather people stop using icky one, that'd be one thing. But
yeah, this doesn't even like rise to the level of like try, where
Okay, so based on this discussion, I'm okay with going ahead with stigmatizing this. If someone wants to propose it, and David has already made a report, and the thing is, I know the thing is well tested, at least. It covers many aspects in the test. So if someone wants to propose it, I would check.
I'll propose that one. Sorry, my computer won't let me go anywhere right now, so I can't actually edit the doc.
Oh my gosh.
So I think we have 10 minutes. So moving on. Moving on to the other things. By the way, can you add yourself to the, you already did. That's nice.
Wait, that's the wrong Skype. Isn't it? I should change your name.
So moving on to nominated RFCs, I think we can skip the RFC because we sort of already discussed it a bit.
This one, yeah.
The Constefan RC that Ollie brought. So there are two concerns. One regarding function functions, I think, if I remember correctly. Or maybe both remembers what their concern was.
No,
Which?
The calling methods on generic parameters of Constefan.
Yeah, I really need to talk to Ollie about this at some point.
All right.
I think that my recollection, and I hope I wrote this in the comment, that there was a subset that seemed fine to move on more quickly.
Does this? We said we wanted to try to get a Constefan meeting. Would this fall under that?
Yeah, this is part of the sense that there's not a lot of transparency into what we're doing on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So
there's also concern around drop. So what I would like to do with this RLC is to accept it in a very experimental form, which is subject to change, and then actually test out the RFC, because I don't think this is an RFC where you can find the perfect solution just by discussing it. It needs to be implemented, it needs to be tested in the standard library, since it's a big change and it's rather sensitive part of the type system.
I think I agree with that. What I would like, we could maybe discuss this. I feel like what I would like is to have a regular set of feedback coming from people who are doing that. Basically, I want to have a shepherd, and Ollie maybe is that person, but who's kind of helping us stay abreast of what those experiments are yielding. And it doesn't have to be every week. I mean, but
to further add to the experimentation point, I would like to implement more than we actually accept in the RFC to see okay, we're moving ahead incrementally, but let's test more things to make sure that future the future compatibility things pan out, and then we don't have to stabilize those.
A question for you, Central, about experimental there. Sometimes when we say experimental in the RFC, we mean this is good to go ahead for implementing, but needs another RFC to stabilize. Would you expect that in this case, or is this we acknowledge that the process to getting to stable here will be long?
Both, I think. Both. It needs more an RFC to check that we have the right design, and I think this will take a long time because there's a lot of testing to do. We have to test it in the ecosystem. We have to constitute large parts of the of libcore and maybe liballoc, and it depends on other things to test it. Like heap allocation in constant evaluation is sort of needed to test more things. So this is like a large project in the compiler, and yeah.
I mean, well, while we're talking about it, I guess my take is that this should be the normal process, for at least for many things, and we'll just move quickly. But kind of that, I would like to see this spec evolving. There's already a repo that exists, and I would like to see that sort of evolving. And there would be a decision point where it's like, okay, we're pretty happy, and we can call it an RFC. We call it kind of whatever we want, but I promise you, if the spec's been evolving and we've been getting updates and we've been constituting the library, it's not going to be the kind of RFC where we go and change a bunch of stuff, right? It's more of a let's acknowledge what's happened here.
Yeah.
And that's
right. So I would like to interpret this RFC like Spark, and then we will revisit things. Just to more of an update. Ollie has been thinking about, we've been thinking about keep allocation for a bit, and Ollie has a nice idea to use auto traits to be able to have keep allocation and transfer them to runtime code. He has a talk about this from Roscon, which is nice. You might want to watch that.
I didn't watch that talk. It'll be fun. Yeah.
And there are some more improvements possible that are future possible. The accessible thingy is in FCP at the moment. So I don't think it needs to be nominated anymore. There is some further discussion, maybe some tweaks necessary, but I think those can be done as part of the tracking issue, like tweaks to the syntax or something. Those are not. I don't think we have spent that much time designing the exact syntax.
Yes. All right. We've been through our agenda here. Shall we? Anything else?
I would just mention that when creating the tracking issue for this RFC, I will split them apart so we can track the implementation and stabilizing of the two different attributes separately. So if one gets stuck implementation-wise, we can move ahead with the other one, and the one that might possibly get stuck implementation-wise is the accessible one, because it sort of might be harder. Yeah. Version is easy to implement, I think.
Yeah.
I'm looking for anything we didn't do, but all right, y'all, we made it through. See you next week.
Yep.
Yeah. Bye.
Have a nice vacation, Josh.
Thank you.
Where are you going, by the way?
Ask me again, not on